The Departed movie review. So this is apparently an American remake of a Hong Kong movie called Infernal Affairs. So it's kind of like Internal Affairs, but Infernal Affairs. I never actually saw the Hong Kong movie, but I was vaguely familiar with it because it was popular in Japan. I would see advertisements for it when I would rent a DVD video. They make you sit through those advertisements at the beginning of the DVD video. They'd always kind of advertise Infernal Affairs. And in fact, there was like a whole series of them. There's like Infernal Affairs 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure if it was all separate stories or all the same stories. I don't know. Anyways, this is the American remake of it, and I don't know if anyone remembers the buzz when this movie came out, but it had quite a big buzz because, wow, what an impressive cast. Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen, Alec Baldwin, and directed by Martin Scorsese. I rented the movie just because of that impressive cast alone. And I think most people did, right? The reason you saw this movie or the reason you rented this movie is because you were very impressed by that cast. The plot of the movie, it's set in Boston. And it revolves around the Irish mafia and kind of also maybe Irish-American culture in Boston. This is going to be a poor comparison, but I was reminded a little bit of The Godfather, right? Or how The Godfather is based on not only the Italian mafia, but the whole Italian-American culture at that time. This doesn't quite get in as deep as The Godfather did, but there are various lines referencing the Irish-American experience. So I think quoting from one of the characters, he said, 20 years after an Irishman couldn't get a job, we had the presidency. May he rest in peace. Now, the plot here gets a bit complicated, but here's the basics. Jack Nicholson is the boss of one of the Irish mafias. Leonardo DiCaprio is an undercover cop infiltrating the mafia. Meanwhile, Matt Damon is an undercover mafia infiltrating the police. And as the plot goes on, there's all sorts of betrayals and changes of allegiance, and it gets a bit complicated. Now, I don't want to get into specifics too much or give too much away here, but while I was watching the movie, there were multiple points where I thought it should be pretty obvious who the mole is. Because at various points, the police and the mafia realize they've got a spy in their organization. And I thought, it's obvious who the spy is. Initially, I was, because I don't have a lot of confidence in my own opinions, I was like, well, maybe this is just me, or maybe I'm missing something. But I've since then kind of read other people's reviews and other people's opinions, where this seems to be a very common viewing experience, where people are like, why don't you realize that he is the obvious mole? Yeah. It seemed to me like when I was watching the movie, everyone was getting pretty sloppy and getting away with it. But maybe you just have to give the plot of this movie a little bit of space. Also, and I guess this is another kind of a spoiler, the climax of the movie revolves around a taped conversation. You've seen this before in a million other movies. Like, it turns out one of the characters said something and he was being tape recorded and he said a lot of self-implicating things, and then the tape gets played at a key point in the climax, I just thought, oh, I've seen this ending a million times already. On the other hand, people do have tape recorders, so, you know, I guess it's realistic, right? You have to be careful what you say. I suppose this is the most obvious way to end a story like this, which is why it has been used so many times before. But perhaps it was because it was the most obvious way to end this movie, it also seemed like it was the laziest way to end this movie. I would have preferred to have a more interesting ending. I don't even know what that would be. But I would have preferred a more interesting ending. Still, I have to admit that it did hold my attention while I was watching it. So, yeah, I guess I'll give it a cautious recommendation.